Welcome again. In our current session, we will have Cultic Games Creative Director John Oral. We will talk about a narrative game that has a manageable scope, but still manages to do new things and show strength in various fields. Welcome again, John. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Okay, thank you. You can start whenever you are ready, of course. Is there anybody else? I saw my students outside. They will come. Maybe we can do a last call. We only have one presentation. We have a PDF file. Yes, of course. Okay. Welcome, everybody. My name is John Oral. I am creative director in Cultic Games. One of my main purposes today is to, well, I'm trying to buy some time while my students are coming. One of my primary goals is to talk to you about Cats and the Other Lives and the development process. And when they requested this panel from me weeks ago, there was a different view. We were going to talk about indie game development in Turkey. We are going against the flow. We are doing different team compositions, and somehow we have been working in this industry for 8 years. And I think in the atmosphere, surviving is important, and I'm going to talk to you about that. I teach in Bahçeşehir University, and I have been teaching for 6 years. And one of the things we have talked was interaction. If you have any questions, raise your hand and we can talk. Doing a static speech for me is really boring. I think interactive speeches is more fun. If you have any questions, or if you want to focus on a certain subject, you just raise your hand, intercept me, and we can continue on afterwards. Okay. So, has anyone heard Cats and the Other Lives here? Can you raise your hand? Can people who played it raise their hands? Okay. Well, if you even only open the game for a bit, it counts. Have you heard about the Stygian? Have you heard about Stygian Reign of the Old Ones? Have you played it? I don't think nobody will raise their hands. Oh, that's great. You played them both? Nice. I would like to introduce myself shortly. I was working in cinema industry until 2015. Short films, medium-length films, music clips, advertisement videos, interviews. I would film those, and I have done everything in the video format. And in 2014, I started working in Riot Games. I wasn't a game developer or anything like that. I was just a video director. I was a videographer there. And one of my goals was to film my long film. But this is Turkey, and you know the situation here. You have, things don't always go as they should. There was some changes in the plans, and my projects got canceled back to back. And I had a star that wasn't really suitable for the project, and I had to reject that actor. The staff changed, the scenario changed, the scenario got rejected by the management. And I had an important director friend, but he quit on me on the last minute. So my cinema career didn't go all that well. So I had some money saved up, and I would always burn that money for the cinema. Uh, but I could not make any progress in terms of my cinema career. Well, in the area that I spent 10 years in, I couldn't make any progress, but video games is my passion. So, you know, Atari, Sega Genesis, Nintendo, I was really curious about gaming industry, and I wasn't making any progress in cinema industry. So I thought to myself, hey, let's switch up to another area that I can be successful in. You know, the Kickstarter. Okay, I won't take too long. I will talk about Kids and Other Lives. And I saw that different games succeeded in Kickstarter. Old school games have succeeded in Kickstarter, and old school games could be marketed to people. So Kickstarter gave me hope, but let's say you have an idea, but you don't have funding, so you can progress. You could get funding from Kickstarter and develop your game. And because of the narration ability I developed in cinema, the video capabilities I developed in the cinema industry could be used in the gaming industry. So I changed my focus to Stygian Reign of the Old Ones, the Kickstarter project for the Stygian Reign of the Old Ones. We surpassed the set goal by 35 to 40%. So I saw myself becoming a creative director in an industry that I didn't know anything about. And in the following 3 to 4 years, I was able to present my game, my dream game, to people. From production to design, I had to work so hard, but it was overambitious for my first project. Students would know the scope is a sensitive subject. So my first project, which I undertook after I was 30. So it was an RPG game, and it was a mid-core game. So there was a developer over 50 years old. He had developed medical software, military software. So he was really experienced, and he was capable in the subject, and he's my friend. And he said it to me about RPGs. This is the brain surgery of programming. When you're making an RPG game, you're not making a single game. If you want to really support the gamer trends, if you want to answer the gamer wishes, you are creating a different game. There's the story aspect, there's the dialogue aspect. If you want to orient your game to those, you create a different game. If you want to focus on crafting, or if you want to focus on science, please warn me if I use an English word, so we can stay in the same page. So if you want to focus on crafting, that is a different game, and all those are should be fun, enjoyable, and trustable. I really wanted to develop games, but we tried to make an RPG game with a team that has never done RPG games before. But when you look at the gaming history, you know, Ultima in 80s, you know, DSR, SSR in 90s, then, you know, Interplay. I'm not even gonna go into the JRPG side of things. You know, Defcom, Sunsoft, even Konami has ventured into this area. This area has been connected by the generations. Let's say in Ultima 4 or Ultima 5, a programmer that worked in Ultima 4 or Ultima 5 started to work in other games. They started working Obsidian, Lorien, and the junior from that started work in Bethesda. And this flow of knowledge, this chain of knowledge won't be broken. But in our time, we didn't have any chain. We had to complete the chain by ourselves, and we had to create a competitive game on a global scale. But we had really good ideas, but our budget wasn't enough. Our publisher relations wasn't as good as it should be, so our game couldn't reach its potential. But I still receive fan mails. My colleagues will know. We received death threats because we couldn't meet the deadlines sometimes. We have been chosen the best Lovecraftian game, so we were able to really live up to the Lovecraftian type style. So Stygian is a really ongoing project for me. Well, let's not take too long and talk about Tessa and the Other Lives. All those lessons taught us that. One, we had a team of professionals, but one of the experienced people has worked in other areas. The other was a musician, and they knew about music corporates, music selling and buying rights. And other friend was in my band, and myself, I graduated from cinema department. I directed films back then, so I directed the game because of that reason. But we all grew ourselves, so we had good aspects of the game and bad aspects of the game. My students are really lucky today because they don't need to be directed. They are being educated. They are learning from our mistakes. They are making these mistakes in the university, so they know their limits better when they venture into the professional industry. But we were left in the jungle. We had to survive by ourselves. Maybe that's really appealed to my masochist side to undertake such a challenge. But in the second game concepts, I was going to educate a person, and I wasn't going to outsource directly. So I saw my students with potential. So in years, if they had good management in their projects, they had really nice ideas. But since
So I said I should raise people and turn them into professionals, make them part of the production, and for the future of cult games, not only cult games, but within Bahçeşehir University, hundreds of students have been raised. I've seen graduation projects, and very few of them have touched me. But even if very few touch me indirectly, we're still feeding an ecosystem. Let's go back to my previous example. What was my example? From the first Ultima to Obsidian to Bethesda, there's a chain, right? And the reason why that chains exist is because there was a game ecosystem there. These people drank beer together. They were working together. Some companies going down, but other companies hiring those people. They were coming together, playing FRPs, and there were other companies which were able to hire them or there was an industry which was able to give them a great industry to work in 30 years or maybe even 40 years. Yes, approaching 40 years actually. Such an ecosystem did exist. Even if this does not feed Cultic games directly, myself or those who add training, for instance, Serkan is like that as well in Euroconcept. People who make an effort help improve this ecosystem. This is happening. So when somebody tries to do similar things after me, it will be easier for them, for that person. And for the next person, it will be even easier. And it will be easier for me as well, because, for instance, Ahmet will enter another structure, then he will establish his own company, then he will train other people, and maybe in my fifth project, that expertise will come back to me. So we are all colleagues here, and in order, we should work to help mature this ecosystem. This was one of my criteria when I started. Cultic Games, in terms of storytelling, it was a company that had proven that it could do something well. I had read thousands of comments, some were positive, some negative. Maybe not even 1% was criticizing the story. Again, maybe less than 1% was criticizing the art. So I had an idea on what we could solve the quickest. Can we go ahead in the slides? I'm sorry because of the light conditions. This is as far as you can see, but you all have smartphones, I'm sure. Okay, then. There should have been an experimentation area as well. I have started a training program. I'm sure my students know. In line with that, students and professionals could join and share their ideas, or people could contribute to an abstract idea and we could build a game. One of the ideas of students, in order to tell this story, you don't even need a person. It could be a ghost or it could even be a cat. So with that, we had the idea for Cats and Other Lives. I don't want to give any spoilers, but if you have played the game, you can ask some questions after me. I won't talk about the narrative of the game, but I will talk about the production. In order to survive as a project, what kind of decisions did I make in producing the game? That is what I want to talk about. One was using our strengths. Second, what are we strong in? For instance, visual design, we were striking and original. And secondly, in narration, a certain level of expertise. My next choice is asset production and recycling. So everything would take place in the same venue so that I could diversify as much as I want, and I could recycle the rooms with different furniture and different lighting conditions. Why? Because when you're doing something like this, you are training people. Yüce was the lead artist, was very skillful. Maybe he produced 80% of the assets, but he didn't have any pixel art experience. Teaching the dynamics of pixel art to him took some time. So if you're setting off to do something like this, and if you're discovering new islands, there's a big cycle of learning there. A very high challenge goal can be set that could either hurt the learning cycle, or you may not reach the goal that you wish. So the game takes place in a single room. The cat is the cat of this house. That was a purposeful decision, so that once all levels finish, versus in an RPG game, you go to a different dimension. The last chapter, in terms of asset and art investment, requires 10 times as much resources because it's the final. So it's supposed to be striking, but we do the same in the same house with ghosts, with different lights, with different music, and with the way we handle gameplay. So that we can make it more manageable or more scalable. Another element is, of course, all games are interactive. All narrative stories are narrative gameplay, but every decision given by the player does not have specific results in Cats and the Other Lives. It was like a mini series, watching 6 episodes and learning about this family and a philosophy about how a cat could affect our lives. This was a purposeful decision, intentional decision as well. When you think about when you think about game narration, linear is not a good word because it sounds like you can only follow one linear path. You are taken down to a single path. But in our case, it was the right approach because there was a philosophy that we wanted to convey about the game, and we did not have the time or resources or the expertise in students to do more. 94% of the reviews of the game are positive. So this shows us that even with linear, even though linear sounds uncool, it shows us that we can tell an interactive story in the gaming world. So this time, I stayed within my limits. I measured our strengths well. Maybe the next stage will be a different RPG. I know only as much as you know. But it was a preparation process. It was a warming up and people raising and preparation process. But of course, it resulted in a successful game and an experience that people did not forget. That was also amazing. I think we worked hard, but maybe we were also lucky, depending on how you look at it. I should not talk of myself only. We should talk together. If you have any questions or any comments. That part is a bit complicated because it was a structure where those who could remained. There were people who were here for a short while, but in total, let's say 10 people contributed. Hello. I have a question about the story. I couldn't find your credits. Maybe it's in the last chapter and I didn't finish the game yet. Is there an American in your story? Because the story that you're writing is a very American story. It tells me that you did not just write in Turkish and then translate. It sounds like you're telling a very American story. For instance, the story it sounds similar to the Knives Out movie. There are similar figures. So how did your writing happen? How did you bring together the cultural references? Did you have someone who had direct experience? You analyzed it quite well. Or did you bring together elements from popular culture? This is something that we discuss in courses as well. In terms of approach, as storytellers on a digital medium, I believe we're creating experiences and we're telling stories. And of course, we're making art. At Cultic Games, or anywhere else in the industry, I don't want people to do derivative work. I think always going back to the source, going back to our roots, our origins, maybe not tolerated much today, but some products that are relevant in the past or books can be reread. I think that's very helpful. Research, going back to the original resource, because you all have ideas about storytelling in games. You have this idea because of the games that you played recently, but even those were affected by previous generation games and the previous one. There is literature, there's cinema. So I believe it's very helpful to feed yourself from the source. In Cultic Games, we do our research quite well. The same for Stygian. You know, the followers of Lovecraft, if you can't do it well, you could end up quite bad. People who are interested in black magic because of their lifestyle, and sometimes you have a fan base that blurs the borders between real life and black magic in order to stay loyal to the original source. For instance, we did not read anything that was generated, that was derived out of Lovecraft. We focused on Lovecraft specifically in 1910s or 1920s. There were some environmental factors that made him who he is, and we focused on that as well. New England, and then Massachusetts, old money, new money, the Puritans, the Yankees, the American industrial giants, and their relations to politics. We studied the term quite well. We studied the period. Secondly, we never do write in Turkish. We always, if it's dialogue, it's always written in English. If we do have time, still we write in English. If I don't have the time, I write in Turkish very fast. Barış Sılay, one of the authors, he translates it. So we have to be as competent as thinking like those people. For that reason, we do it in English. And lastly, we didn't have any native speakers in-house, but we are interested in literature. We are not lacking in skills in English, but in every game, we had American, there's a reader, proofreaders who are American, and we discuss with them. I chose this. Should I go ahead with this? Can this be used in Massachusetts in this time period? This is important, and this is a great question. Thank you. It's important because we're selling an experience. The suspension of disbelief is something maybe you know from my courses. In order to make it compelling, every aspect of the illusion has to be sound. For instance, one of the things that help us lose focus in a show is, for instance, this character would not do this, or this wouldn't work. Of course, when there are obvious mistakes, we see this, but human conscious can understand deep down that something is fake, and such fakeness can turn into a big fakeness, or the illusion is disrupted, and at that point we object. Our job is to be an illusionist and to not let them notice that they're in a game. The words that the characters use, or in their behavior in the system, their culture, their lifestyle, even the brand of the phone that they put on the table, we have to maintain the illusion. And text is also important. For that reason, it makes this aspect more important.
If you work with any experimentation, I picked, and it was one of the greatest things. It was a foreign PRA, and we were a small team. And at the time, and community for for um, as again, are you as you may have our campaign shot for 30 so they did and even we're a team that are pitch publishing. For that, I said, okay, this is going beyond us. I see I'm missing them. I didn't want to work on it, and I didn't read. And I started working with one agency and um, but all the influencers on side, but it was important also because of that. By the way, we have, but for our post by Eric made it and what he navigates the text and I wasn't really forward. I really didn't see what I desired. It was a wrong move because I panicked and that's on that end of the relationship. I actually to those people who could have organic relationship. It was one of the things. And to those people could really appreciate our game and could act those two for the greatest um calculate again and end it. I think I should have and for other things I wanted but I had like from all over the company. What I decided I didn't get it. So that's why I retained it. But all the boxes have been done accurately. Well, of course, you can always do better, that's for sure. Well, I'm trying to work with university students, and I'm a university student. I think most of the people you have in your team are university students. And I think they didn't really have experience, formal experience in them. And to them adapting to the industry and to their work in project management, I working quite hard. Well, extra effort, you say. But do you have any suggestions about it? Well, for those people who'd like to be in this particular industry? Yes, for sure. Well, after leaving our comfort zone, because when you do something for the first time while getting to the office environment, adapting yourself to certain time period, Ibrahim is there and you had your interest with us and you probably coincided with the phase of the project that was considered quite stressful. and well, committing to the time frames and making healthy and solid decisions about their lives, or assuming the responsibility of the business. Well, it's been a good example, I believe, and Berke has helped us here. And people that you're working with, they should be capable of doing this business. And I'm not a musician. The culture, the sense of responsibility that people can take. I can't bring them to a level that they can't attain. But I'm a gardener. If the soil is good, if the land is good, if the climatic conditions are good, I can only make sure that the fruit that I reap is good. So what else could I really look out for? I have a background in teaching. I fight a patient with I eat. I thought for like years, and I did it. It's quite difficult to do. And you into nonsense a lot, and you let go of these patients, and because it's the point where you contact with the patients. And we are passionate people, and what we do is it by passion. Not, I mean, although it is not like a mobile site, what we're doing is something special, and the work and know it. And when they attend about it, they feel it as well from others, and this is something prestigious for their own lives as well. And difficulty rating of what we do compared to other operations, but it's much more difficult. You need better conditioning, and when they're done with the process, they can easily find jobs in other areas, and they feel like professionals who are driven by meritocracy. And many students that I work with, they are doing great things around them. And yes, despite I had difficulty, I had hardship, but after you go beyond a certain threshold, feel that you're part of something good, you're developing it and creating it together. The ideas that you come up with at the office, they're being heard, and it's being turned into something real, and it's quite supportive. And you don't read alternatives, right? You will either stop and abandon this in the or you will learn and you will be excited and you'll do it more effortlessly. Not the deliberate the same level of effort to how it worked 3 years ago, because experience has given me the chance to tackle certain things in a better way. So of course it's gonna feel quite difficult, but some barriers you're gonna go through, and it's gonna get difficult, and then you will find the condition a platform for yourself. So you will be different things. If you're an artist, for example, you will be working with more optimized 3D models, and it's not really going to be as difficult as it seems. And one last note is that this is a technical business, or more like a design-oriented or artistic business. People consider it this way. Well, I'm for those students of mine who've heard it quite a lot, but only 30% of it is technical design driven or artistic. Well, and 70% of it is based on group dynamics and human relations, and this is the only raw material in people that we have. We always act as a perspective of freedom. So these are our greatest assets. So their motivation, their development, and their relationship with others on the team, they are for us. And most people always tend to focus on their crafts. I see it. I see this trend in the industry. But unless you're able to team, unless you're able to the others, and unless are courageous enough to take it back, and unless you take it back, it will not really favorable for you, because very little of you will proceed alone, and not all of you will be winning boys. So you will all, most of you will be teams. And I would prefer, well, super talented and super smart, but a bad team player rather than acting with them, working with them. I would be okay with a player who have mediocre level of knowledge, for example, but a good team player. Any other questions? And indeed, team developed a game, and their narrative was based on cats as well. And how did you feel? Did you consider them as well, we took action actually? But when we first saw it, it was like 2 years ago, I guess. Then it was event of Sony and watched them digitally. And by the way, back then we had already started to develop and the similarity of the color of the cat. Well, this made us somewhat concerned, but we took action and we had a meeting, and it wasn't even we didn't have a game, and we didn't really want to attack. We were imitating it. We knew that it was supported by Sony, and we didn't really do this game with a publisher. And the previous game was with a publisher, but this one was on LinkedIn. So we needed to assert our as well. We didn't have a game, but we had 5 screenshots, a website. We had already for the sites. So when we had all that interactive steps. So they're very, very different games. Well, I can't really talk about my own work of art, but animation and how realistic. Well, in terms of pixelation, they animate that in a better fashion, but the, the ordinary behavior of what we were obsessed with is we were developing the game. So we didn't really want to use any but have many other tools, like for example, there is a blind wand, and there is something on the back of it, and it carries us. So it is a Deus Ex machine, like a good mentioned in the design, and there are many aspects that we see for this software. And we based on Road, and the motivations of the cats are therefore quite ambiguous. But you cannot really be very sure about the motivation of your cat, right? That you can only have assumptions about what that you have at home. So I like the other game a lot as well, especially the visual design and other aspects. I appreciated, but I knew that it was going to address the target groups. Pets and the other lives, based on the relationship between human and the cats, and it is the rating of a family for 60 is from the eyes of a cat, and it became the story of a cat going back home. So we are doing great things about it. The cat and the lives, yes, we have all these comparisons, but there are different products, and we are on different journeys. So you will experience it in the future as well. But what matters is how your game is differentiated from them. If you're trying to be in the same market, this would be problematic. And then I could have that. But for you cannot do better. I think life is quite short for you to work on stuff that you can't really improve. As far as I know, you worked with Apple for Asian market. And are they providing you the penetration that you intend to? I would like to hear from you about this and positive comments. Well, I'm not only about gaming, but working with people in the Far East is because you could have education barriers and the contract that goes into. I have to write the entire contractual language with a lawyer. I can't say that I corrected it. I rewrote it. Well, before it level of uh, margin, but I didn't really want to deal with anything that threat in the future. There are some games that also supported. I mean, they had examples. Can't really go into the details of that, but the deal that they offered to me was great because I had nothing to do, and I actually didn't want to enter into the market, but their offer was good, and they didn't really do bad. Well, the sales of the game went well, and I had certain interviews in the market as well. So they all played a role. But the negative side of it is that, but keep this in mind about the Asian market. You're developing a game where the text is strong. It is quite important that people on the other side of the world understand your game as well. And that brings along the question of localization. Asia and goes to the Far East for localization because I'm, from my former experience, they're somehow underestimated. And they are translating it literally. And if I were speaking the language, I would probably have those cringe moments. Yes, they are positive, and I'm thankful for it in research. But the people that I'm working, they are coming up with so much critical questions that without answering to them, they can't really remember this message. But when I have questions from Asia, I had some questions from the Japanese, quite Chinese and Korean. They had zero questions whatsoever. So they apparently translated it localized too. And I saw this other side, and I'm not satisfied with that. I'm frustrated with it. Did they really understand it? I do wonder that even by Google Translate, I can't really understand this these differences. So the narrative on side, that's why it's quite important. But I can't really say that it's a deal breaker, but let's see how it's going to happen. And I can't actually answer this question after I see what happens with hearing. By the way, we have 2 minutes left. If there's anything that you'd like to add, you're more than welcome. Well, it was great seeing you here. So thank you very much for your participation. Anything that you didn't feel quite right about? Or for each game, there are things that you don't feel quite right about, and that's part of what you do. You not really 100% satisfied with what we create. If this is the case, if we not really open to communication, we have weaknesses and some deficiencies in what we produce. So we need to analyze that because we are a rapidly changing industry. Optimization, for example, when the game is opening up, there is this unnecessary file loading time. It is good to boost performance of it. But when you think about it, this is an obvious constant time period, and lower hardware systems, the user tends to think that the problem that they experience of certain scenes is good, but the other things is not the case for others. And gameplay and narrative and the integration. I think spending more time on it and allocating more resources to it, I think it would have been better. Well, we are raising people here, so this is an educational project as well. So it was developed in a period of 2 to 3 years, and with a team that is well conditioned, I think we could have finished it in a time period of 2 years. So you can proceed and you can advance to a certain level and then you withdraw. Have you experienced that to withdraw from it? Yes, I had the experience. I had the experience while I was shooting movies, and I was working on a design. I even had meetings with product manager, so it was we were only one step away from initiating the project, and we gave up because I didn't really have this energy to be wearing the VR headset for another 3 years. I didn't really want this kind of experience. And then COVID happened, and the capability of using our VR lab, well, this was not an option for us as well. And I didn't really feel that the market was quite conducive. And I had meetings with product manager, engineering support I was going to receive. So we were only one step away from starting. I was looking for investors and I just stopped it. And a friend of mine said yes, but despite this, I'm repeating myself. It's a good option, something that you can finish in 5 months or 2 years. This is not such business. And when you set out on a journey, you need to be able to see the very end of it. And this is the level of motivation and the level of resources that you need to have. And this, you need to make sure that you have users' interest and at least be sure of that. Thank you very much for taking time and see you again.